Enough electoral votes, more than 270, more than enough to become the 44th president of the United States. He will be the first African-American president of the United States.
I've been broke all my life, but I kept hope all them nights. You see business in my city? Yeah, they closed all them twice. I was just riding down Salem, all them damn potholes. I can't drive. I know y'all can fix it faster, but I know y'all won't try. Don't nobody care about us, and that's why I don't vote. Voted for Obama back in 2012, I remember that's when I had hope. He was saying, yes, we can, and everybody got less food stamps. And when I turned 21, I was still broke, I'd never vote again. I don't think I ever had a president make my life better. Did it all on my own, ain't no politician ever do a nice gesture. I don't even know the mayor's name, I ain't never seen her one time ever. Tell me how she gonna help the city. What I'm supposed to do, write letters? What I'm supposed to do, blame Trump? He ain't never really gave a Ain't nobody raise minimum wage. None of these jobs pay enough. I think they just wanna keep us broke, cause they ain't putting none in place for us. This how all my people feel, but we gotta learn. We complain enough, let me change it up. Everything I just said, everybody I know think the same way. See, they don't wanna see us vote, and we never do, so we see the same thing. But all our votes really do count, and they'll never really let it show. So now I'm finna break it down, cause if I don't, you would probably never know. First thing first, you know back in middle school when they taught us, it was 3 branches of the government. We forgot it when we got older. It's the judicial, the legislative, and executive. But all we know is the executive. That's the mayor or the governor and the president. Now none of them 3 people make no laws, they just be checking them. The laws come to their desk and all they do is say no or yes to it. So when the news station tried to tell us that Barack Obama couldn't put us on, we was all salty at Obama when it was the Congress members all along. We gotta focus on the legislative branch, yeah, they the ones that make the laws. Yeah, they the ones write how much food stamp money you get on the card. But when people that wanted to help us wanted the job, I know they probably lost. Cause we ain't even know their name, we ain't know their face, we ain't know it all. So the Congress or the State House, that's legislative, they make laws. So what we want from the president is what they do, okay y'all? See, they election every 2 years, but we don't ever even go to those. The Congress, they can raise minimum wage, but we ain't even really know it though. So you know how back in 08, when we all voted for Obama, we was all supposed to go back in 2010 and vote for the Congress. Cause they the ones make child support laws, they the ones choose if your kids at school get to eat steak or corn dogs. The State House make the court calls. So if the country failed, then you can't say it's them, it's your fault. Cause y'all ain't know to vote for Congress members that was for y'all. And they don't gotta leave after 4 years, and we just let them sit. See, they don't wanna tell you this, they want you to focus on the president. Now the third branch is the judicial, that's judges. They the reason why John Crawford and Trayvon ain't had justice. So when Meek Mill got locked up just for popping willies, we blame the judge and not the city when they let her get voted in, cause they ain't know who to vote against. Imagine life on the other side. Roads better, schools better, everybody get their license back. Grocery store food better, custody of your kids back. Homeless people get new shelters. If we gon' fix the U.S., we gotta start with them 2 letters, me and you. Somebody told us that the government wanna keep us broke, but the only reason why those people in the government is cause we ain't vote. And I ain't talking about the president, I'm talking about the ones we ain't know. See, they was gonna try to keep it low, but it's gonna hurt them when they see the pros.
Every time you stay home, someone is making a decision about you, making decisions about the air you breathe, the water you drink, the food your kids eat, and how much money you bring home every 2 weeks. So every time you sit out an election, every time you don't show up because you think it doesn't matter, someone else is happy that you didn't show up, so they can make that decision for you. Vote.
Enough electoral. 270.
We want to welcome everyone tonight to the Lansing People's Assembly. This has been almost 2 years in the making that we've been having these. We started these during the pandemic. We felt that there were issues that the community needed to gather around, and we began to meet and to lay out a community agenda and to hear from community. And so we want to thank everyone for being here. We also want to thank those that are with us online. We are not having technical, but we have a lot of tech issues that are happening right now. So we want to welcome those that are online in Zoom. We also want to welcome those who are on Facebook, on our Facebook page, they're going to actually drop the link so that when we go offline on Facebook, if you want to get into the breakout session discussions, you're going to have to jump over into the Zoom. So the Zoom link for those that are on Facebook, you will have that opportunity. They're going to drop that link in the comment section in the Facebook chat. And so for those of you all who are with us today in person, we also want to welcome you as well. And so the Lansing People's Assembly is a multiracial, multi-generational, multi-ideological, and multi-gendered assembly. The assembly brings all the voices together in a circular fashion and engages the thinking, experiences, and visions of all participants in order to synthesize and collectively agree on action steps. This model that we've put together has been modeled from the Jackson, Mississippi People's Assembly. And the people of Jackson began to organize. They gathered themselves and they began to deal with the issues that impact their community. And one of their major wins was they identified and they were able to get a new mayor elected that began to really push a community-centered, community-facing agenda. And so, so we want to thank Jackson, Mississippi for laying that model. And that's what we're building. That's what we're building here. And so Mayor Lumumba is the active mayor in Jackson, Mississippi. You can go to YouTube and just type in Jackson People's Assembly and read more about the Jackson People's Assembly. That's what we're building here. We are building a space that's owned by the people, where we set the agenda, where we lift our voices, because oftentimes what we hear over and over from elected officials and those in power, that they're listening to community and they do things that are harmful to community. And so it's like, well, obviously you're not hearing the whole community. And so we need a safe space to be able to air our concerns, but not just air our concerns, but develop strategies and to organize ourselves. And so that's what this is about. This is about we loving ourselves and loving our community. And so we are building the beloved community. Can we all just say that, the beloved community? And so I want us to just really think about what does that mean to you, where everyone has an opportunity to prosper, where all children have the opportunity for quality education. So the theme of this People's Assembly is help us protect our children. Help us protect our children. That's what this is about. This is about the next generation. And so we know that we have been in unprecedented times due to COVID, but on the flip side, there is a tremendous amount of resources that have been released from the federal government, the state. And so there's money available, but we have to lift our voices tonight. So what I would like for everyone to do is to just take a deep breath. I know many of you all have been working, you're coming from work. And so what we'd like to do is just take a deep breath here in this space. And I just want you to just imagine what it would be like if we could dismantle this false belief in a racial hierarchy. And so let's take a pause. How'd that make you feel? What'd you think about? Who'd you think about? And we always have a grounding. We always have this moment where we just kind of ground ourselves, and we want to lift up families like the Leoya family, Patrick Leoya, who, his life was taken by Grand Rapids Police on a random day, on a rainy day. He was stopped because of a tag, and he did not get up off the ground because of a tag issue. And he was shot in the back of the head. And Patrick Leoya attended Everett High School here in Lansing. His family lives here in Lansing. So Patrick Leoya is a part of Lansing's history, a part of us. And so we want to lift that up today. And so we also want to acknowledge that we are on land that was stolen, that was taken. And we acknowledge those indigenous and those tribes that were forcibly removed from their land. And so we pause for even the plantations that were here in Michigan. And most people don't realize that Michigan had slave plantations. And so there were civilizations that were here hundreds and hundreds of years. And so we pause. This is what this is about today, to settle ourselves and to begin to think about how do we come together to move our community forward. I have been here since 2002, and I come from a whole nother world where people have big ideas, big businesses, they collaborate. I was not ready for Lansing. And I've been around a very, since 2003, and not much has changed in this community. And that's a shame. But I can look at other communities and there's economic development. There are grocery stores, there are fresh fruit, there are all kinds of things happening in their schools. And so that's what today is about. So most people say, hey, we know what the issues are. We're ready to have this conversation. And so how can you get involved? On the screen, what we want you to know is that this process, today's assembly is being hosted by One Love Global. And for those of you all that are here, this is the One Love Global TRHT Center for Healing. And this space is available to community, and we host events like the People's Assembly and other events, right? We also are, one of the major nonprofit organizations that focus on racial equity and community organizing. And so we convened the TRHT work for the last 5 years. And I would like to introduce Angela Austin Waters, the CEO of One Love Global. She is on. And I know we always have this back and forth, and my back is to the screen, Angela, so I can't see you. But wanted to know if you could just give a shout out to those that are with us in the space.
Yes, thank you, Mordecai, and thank you for that beautiful welcome and grounding. It is so good to see all of you on the screen tonight, since I'm virtual here in Zoom. Hello to everyone in the room that I cannot see. Welcome to One Love Global. Welcome to the family and the People's Assembly. We have really powerful conversation that is going to be much more rich because you are here to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we are also, so tonight we're going to have a series of like short presentations, and then we want to hear from you. We're going to present some data, but we really want to hear from the community. So we also have our family and friends here from the Vera Institute of Justice, and they're going to have an opportunity to introduce themselves later on in the agenda. And they have been working with the Ingham County Prosecutor's Office over the last almost, a year and a half, maybe 2 years, right? And so they're at the end of that work, and they're here to share some data that kind of, culminates with that relationship and how do we move forward. So this is a very important conversation. And so people always ask, how can I get involved? On the screen, you can see the various roles. What we're asking everyone to do is to, if you want to be a part of moving a people's agenda forward, you want to volunteer and help hold this space, help lead it. We had a wonderful conversation today with Ms. Murphy, principal of Real Elementary, where they literally reimagined what education can look like for children and how we just totally remove a punitive mindset instead of suspending, instead of like the whole thing of just how we treat and how we see each other. The parents and administration got together to reimagine that entire process. And so it was wonderful to sit with great leaders today. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for folks who are willing to reimagine what our community can look like. So you see on the screen that we always ask, what are the issues? But more importantly, what are the solutions? And what are we going to do about it? A lot of times we expect our elected officials to have the answers. Well, we elected them, so it's up to them. No, that's not how it works. And so we have to give them the agenda. And that's what we're here to do today. So in the chat is a link for you for those that are online. If you want to volunteer, please click that link. We want to encourage you to be a part of the community organizing that will happen through the Lansing People's Assembly. Next slide. So what are we building? So if we can all just take a moment and just look at the beloved community, this is what we're building. The beloved community. People say, well, Mordecai, why are you so adamant? Why, like, because I've seen better. I've experienced better. My children, I am the father of 4 children, 2 Black boys and 2 Black girls. And I've had the opportunity to actually raise 2. 2 are actually graduated from college. They're out doing their thing. But we've had tremendous run-in with police. We've had tremendous run-in with all kinds of disparities. We've had to move them out of schools. And if it wasn't for the ounce of social capital that I might have, my children wouldn't be where they are. And so it's been hard. It's been hard. And it shouldn't have to be that way. It shouldn't have to be that way. And so what about all the folks who don't have an ounce of social capital? It's our job to build something where we all prosper. So what I'd like for us to do is just to read. I know Carrington is here and we've got other from the One Love Global team, but can we just all on the count of 3, just read number 1 out loud? 1, 2, 3.
Mordecai, hang on just a second. We can't see the slides. Should we be reading here?
Yes. You can't see the slide?
No, we cannot. Thank you, Mary.
Why don't we just share the slide? What about now?
There you go.
There we go. Okay. I thought we were all on the same page. We're not even moving together. So I'm going to move over here a little bit so you can see the slide. Yep. So let's all just read. This is the beloved community that we are all building. So 1, 2, 3. The conditions that create crime and violence are no longer present. Pause. Number 2. 1, 2, 3. Outcomes
can no longer be predicted by race.
We're going to have that conversation tonight. Number 3. 1, 2, 3. Racial hierarchy no longer the norm. Number 4. 1, 2, 3. Everyone
feels welcome.
We're not talking about like in the Lansing People's Assembly. We're talking about in our community, where there is no wrong place to be in your community. Oftentimes youth get interactive with police like, well, they're in the wrong place. Why is there a wrong place for me to be in my community? And then number 5, 1, 2, 3. Everyone feels safe. So we've grounded ourselves. We know why we're here. We know what our charge is. We're going to ask our data team to come. And so we're going to ask you to switch the slide. And let's see here. So we also want to let you all know that for accountability's sake and so that we organize ourselves, there will be note taking and you can read that. And you can, in the chat, you can privately chat with myself or Dominique Stepp that is inside the chat, or Lillian Brooks inside of the chat if you have an issue with note taking. But we do have note takers that will be recording responses so that we can be accountable for those if that is okay. But if you have an issue with that, you can please email us privately in the chat. Next slide. All right. Yeah. So now I want to introduce one of our One Love Global members that are part of our data team, Aislinn. I think she's going to come and let's just give her a hand. We love Aislinn.
I feel like I'm hiding behind the camera. Hi, everyone. As Mordecai said, I'm Aislinn. I use she and they pronouns, and I'm part of our data team here at OLG. So just to start off and kind of ease us into a deeper conversation that we're going to have with our friends from the Vera Institute, we just wanted to give kind of a snapshot of just a couple of measures that are currently what we're looking at in the Lansing School District specifically. So all of this data is publicly available, but we have been working to sort of compile it, make it easier to sort of process and sift through. You can find more about it, all of this data and much more on our Lansing Racial Equity Scorecard on the One Love Global website. I can try to drop a link to it in the chat for those virtually here in a minute. But just to pop through some of these data points, just in the last school year in the Lansing School District, there were 239 homeless students, about half of which were Black or African American or of African descent. That number is a tough one to measure, especially because homelessness is such a tricky thing to track. If you actually look at it from year to year, it's actually less than the previous school year, which, you know, kind of sounds like a win, like, yay, there's fewer homeless students. But what we're actually concerned about is the fact that it just means that the homeless kids in our city are just not being connected to school now. We know that, like, with the pandemic, with a lot of schools switching to online learning, those without access to reliable internet weren't able to, you know, profit from that as well. So we're worried about those existing gaps widening. As for our next data point, looking at literacy, we know that third grade literacy is a really huge indicator of later school and life success. And yet in the Lansing School District, as of, you know, May this year, the percentage of third graders who are reading at that reading level was only 17%. For our Black students, it was only about 11%, and they are our largest demographic group. And that's comparable to 42% at the statewide, which still means that for the entire state, less than half of our kids are reading at what, you know, the state has decided is like the level that will, you know, predict later success. So that's really concerning. And especially once again, with the pandemic, we know that having, you know, some multiple years of online or hybrid learning was really difficult for some students, especially those who were just starting their education and having to sort of work extra hard to sort of make up for the lost time in school. And our final point here is about school graduation rates in the Lansing School District. The graph's a little small, but it basically, the blue line is the graduation rate for our Black students in the Lansing School District, who, as I had said, are the largest demographic. They're about 40% of the students. And the orange line is all other students. So normally what we say a lot of our goals is for, you know, those two lines to meet and be, you know, together, which would mean that there's no, you know, differences based on race, which would, you know, be wonderful, except in this case, those lines are both trending downwards. So as of 2022, the graduation rates for Black students was about 60%. For all other students, it was like 60.2%. So those are really close together, but they were a significant drop from the year before. So I just want to do a hard pause here and sort of open it up to those either in the room or on Zoom, to just sort of give us some reactions or responses. Like, what is this making you feel? Disgusted. Someone in person said disgusted. Yeah, it's kind of a lot to look at. Anyone else on Zoom as well?
I see shocking in the chat. And you're more than welcome to come off mute if you want to comment yourself directly.
Yeah, I think it's appalling. It's so saddening. And I think of kids who are my grandchildren's age, struggling like this.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's definitely hard to see that, like, you know, I don't have kids, but I'm still a part of this community, and it's hard to see that, like, you know, students that we work with, that we have relationships with, or even, you know, the kids of those that we have relationships with are, you know, in this situation, and it's pretty hard to see. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I had a parent in the room who said it's hard to see as well. 7 kids, yeah. Your thoughts?
What are they doing with our tax dollars?
Someone wanted to know what they're doing with our tax dollars, and that's something, at least when we have had conversations, one of our friends' cars brought up that, you know, it's school funding is something to look into and school choice, but what we've also seen is that, you know, when parents are able to choose, you know, what districts their kids are going to, there's a lot more parents choosing to send their kids to other school districts than there are children, you know, who are coming from outside districts to come to Lansing schools.
We have a couple more comments in the Zoom chat. Feeling overwhelmed and sad by this data. agreement that this is really sad. Our children need resources and a community that cares.
Yeah, thank you for lifting those up, Angela.
At all levels of policy and education, Black youth are being left behind. And Ash, hey Ash, I learned at the MBK Gen event in 2017 that prisons are built near places with low third grade reading levels. This gap is concerning for that reason and others. Yeah, they call that the school to prison pipeline. And hey, Jean, we have such low literacy rates in our country. This is bad. And we had Detroit sue the Michigan Department of Education, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they decided that children do not have a right to literacy.
That's the first one I'm hearing of that.
Sandra Cole has her hand raised.
Yeah, go ahead, Sandra. You can come off mute. And you can also share your thoughts in the chat and we can read them out if you're having trouble coming off mute as well.
Yes, try to hover down on the bottom left corner and you should see a little microphone pop up with a red line through it. Technology, I tell you.
Carr, did you have something you want to step to the mic?
We are moving to the suburbs and taking our money with us. We need to invest back in Lansing. And the question, who didn't have the right to literacy? Jean, students. That public education is the law and it must be provided, but that does not mean that students actually have a right to literacy. Like there's a nuance there that we should not miss.
Nothing. This is so specifically the court case that we're talking about, it reinforced how we look at funding for schools. So it's saying that the state had no right specifically to talk about how each school district in and of themselves are funded, which actual school districts and statements should actually sue to have that individual right. So it's a question of specifically how do we accept funding, how do we change funding at the state and local level. So it's a double pronged attack on that one. Also, Nutrients have actually suggested that, no, that didn't actually suggest it, actually found that middle-class Black kids that live in these suburbs, they're excelling at higher rates, if not the same rates as their white counterparts. So specifically, we don't have an issue of, race saying that these people cannot achieve at these certain levels. The issue is the quality of education, the access to education specifically.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Norma had asked, what do those numbers indicate for tomorrow's workforce? Which, yeah, it's concerning, especially for the literacy, since, it goes on to, predict not only school success, but also job success, because that's such an essential skill that, it's concerning and, we hope won't continue to compound itself as, children might face additional problems in the workforce. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so sad you have to take kids out of the school district to give them a better education. Because there's other issues when you go outside of and deal with racism. So there's other issues besides just education. I try to get my kids in some schools. Period is too late. That's a school of choice. My heart is really breaking. My should-be third grader started kindergarten the year of the pandemic. So I let them roll her back. So now she's doing second grade. And she falls in that category, struggling to be literate, being able to read. And I didn't know how widespread it was. And I'm going to be doing more now that I know. I will be volunteering and be more of a voice because this is heartbreaking.
Yeah, for those online, one of the parents in the room was sharing that, you know, it's more complicated than just sending your kids to a better district, especially, you know, if they might face more racism and discrimination in, you know, another district. And, you know, to see these statistics that, you know, represent, you know, a class or an age group that your child is in is, you know, really difficult because, you know, it can be easy having maybe like individual struggles with school, but like seeing it as a wider picture is definitely can be challenging. Did you have a point?
Community company is best, but if you don't have it work like Amazon, they're not gonna, you know, if you don't have people that are educated, they won't invest.
Right. We had circled back. Exactly. Someone had circled back to the point about how this is affecting, you know, our future workforce and how, you know, we need qualified, you know, workers to come into jobs. And then if we don't have that, it's going to, you know, lead to companies not investing in certain areas and that it just continues the downward spiral.
Sandra Cole has worked out the mic situation here, Sandra.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I mentored a homeless couch hopping family of girls over several years, from when they were 9 until they were finally pushed out of school by being recommended that they do homeschooling. I really would like to talk to someone about that.
Mm.
They're
Yeah.
19, they're 19 now and they've been to jail.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Sandra. We'll follow up with that because we definitely want to be able to connect, you know, to the families in our community who are dealing with this and, you know, help connect you if there's other work you want to be able to take part in. But that's
Thank
a part
you
of
so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank you for sharing and bringing that up because, you know, sometimes you hear about these issues and, you know, if you're not directly connected to them, it's easier to push them back. But, you know, being in community together, we can hear, you know, different people who've experienced these things or, you know, have worked in these areas, you know, really reinforces that, you know, it's all one community.
So as Aislinn, and we see like we have people that still have your hand up. If you have your hand up and you didn't have the opportunity to speak, please, we want to acknowledge them. Say it again. Yep. And also drop your question in the chat, you know, because the next part of this discussion is if you don't have resources in the community, our children will end up interacting with the police and they will be sitting in the process. They will be in someone's courtroom and end up in jail. And the narrative is, once again, that somehow that their history, they deserve this outcome and they are a result. They're not a root. It's a fruit, not a root. And we're here to dismantle systems of oppression. We're not here to trim the tree and make it look pretty. We're here to uproot it. And that's hard work because in America, there are some people who benefit from other people's misfortune. And unfortunately, in our city, we have many who are on the underside of power, and we are lifting up our voices. And I just want to take a moment because we're going to go deeper and you're going to see more data that is going to really help us to understand why we need to organize ourselves. I feel like this is a sacred moment, and I don't use that word very often, but this is like a sacred moment. I don't know what it feels like to be at a middle school in Lansing and you're struggling. You know, I have people in my circle who came back and said they started school and certain schools didn't have chairs, didn't have enough chairs in the classroom, didn't have playgrounds. But when we lift our voices, Okemos doesn't have that problem. DeWitt doesn't have that problem. Grand Ledge doesn't have that problem. Mason doesn't have that problem. So we know we can do better and we have to demand better. Is there anyone in the Zoom that did not get the opportunity to lift your voice?
Mordecai, this is Angela Stepter, and I'd like to share some of the commentary from the chat with you.
Okay.
There was a question about Has anyone addressed the issue of why there are so many homeless families in Lansing? The issue of the lack of affordable housing seems to never be addressed when we talk about homelessness.
Yes, this is something that we and in community organizing have consistently addressed, is that we actually have a housing crisis. And we need our elected officials to stand up, stand out, and do the right thing. There are always regulations, there's always red tape, there's always bureaucracy, but we need to center people first and not policies and processes that exclude people and keep people in this vicious cycle. And so there are those that are working feverishly. Even the problem is exacerbated with those who are, being released out of jail. Their record is holding them from, so if you don't even have enough housing, then you think about those folks who are coming out of jail, out of prison, where do they fall? And so you have organizations like Outside Nation. So there's a lot of work, but the people, we have to rise up. That's what this, like, nothing is going to happen at a council meeting if you're absent and I'm absent. If we don't show up to vote, we don't vote down ballot, nothing is going to change if we don't let our elected officials know that this is unacceptable, period. This is unacceptable. There's nowhere else to go. If you cannot read at a certain level, you're going to end up in jail. You're going to end up in jail. And once you get in that system, you're in that system. You're caught in it. And it's like a scarlet letter on your chest and on your back and freaking branded on your forehead. You can't let it go. And so we're going to transition. We got one more comment. Yep. So we're going to take a 2-minute break. And what we want to do is we want you to just load up the comment section, and with your questions that you asked. If you weren't able to put them in the comment section, please put them in the comment section. And what we're going to do is we're going to stop share, and then we're going to introduce our Vera team, and they're going to take us deeper. Of justice. So I'm going to ask them to, am I muted? I'm unmuted. We are joined with an amazing professionals from the Vera Institute of Justice. And I'm just going to ask them to come one by one. And Jack, if you would introduce everyone else, that way I won't mess it up, right? Because I'm nervous, you know what I mean? Like, you mess up everybody's name, where they're from and stuff like that. So
you're much taller than me. We should can move.
Oh, you mean right here?
Hey everyone, I'm Jack Giles. It is such a pleasure to be here and be working with One Love Global from the Vera Institute. I'm sorry, I've never spoken onto a mic like this. So like I said, my name is Jack Quiles. I'm from the Vera Institute, and we worked together as a team to with Carol Seaman, the district attorney elected in your county, to do a data analysis of their case management system to see what the impact of the decisions that are made in that office is on the community of Ingham County. So we've done a series through, in partnership with One Love Global, also where the prosecutor's office was present and participated and answered questions. We did a series, it's all available on YouTube, that you can also watch it by video, where we presented not only what it is that a prosecutor's office does, but beyond that, what the results of our data analysis was as well. So we looked at data from 2015 to 2019, and with our team here, we'll get into more detail about what that analysis was and a little bit of how we did it. Today is our kind of like culmination of that work. We come to this work as invited, into your community by One Love Global and by the prosecutor's office, asking for us to come in and help to address the racial disparities that they have recognized in their data and how they impact the community in prosecution. So this today is kind of a culmination of those conversations, where we're going to be presenting some information about the recommendations that we've made to the office, but also this is a really important opportunity for us to be, part of conversation or hear conversation about what happens next. What do we do next? So we have recommendations that we will be sharing with you all in today's presentation, but we also have the data points that show why we have made certain recommendations. And the data points that we're providing today are from our analysis, and we'll be focusing on age groups of 25 and younger. So there will be some analysis for 17 to 25-year-olds, and then some analysis for 17 and under. We also looked at how the homeless community is impacted in particular. So I'm sorry, I'm like rambling a little bit because I wasn't sure how much to go into for today. But before we start our next slide, though, I just want to introduce the rest of the team. So it's the three of us that have kind of like worked together on this. So Sarah Darwish, you can come up, and oh wait, first I'm passing to Sheba. So I'm going to pass to Sheba, who's our researcher on our team, our data researcher who helped, with our data analysis. Yeah, so I'm just going to pass to you, and throughout the presentation, the three of us will be alternating, just describing some of the slides. And please, if there's any questions, please don't hesitate to ask or write them down or include them in the chat, because some of this could be a little heavy. And I guess I also just want to, again, emphasize that this data is very difficult to look at. It's very difficult to internalize. It's really heavy. And so whatever you need to do to make space, take time for yourself, to care for yourself while going through this. We will also have pauses at each section so that we can, take a breath, and so that we can move forward in conversation. All this information will also be available after today's presentation as well, for folks to revisit. So I'm going to pass to Sheba, who will then pass to Sarah, and then we're going to walk through our slides. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Sheba. I'm a research associate at the Vera Institute. I'm from Ann Arbor, Michigan. So I consider myself a Michigander. And yeah, I'm excited and happy to be with you all.
I'm the shortest one coming up to the mic. Hey, everyone. I'm Sarah Darwish. I'm a program associate on the Vera team. And I'll actually start us through the presentation. So like Jack said, we're going to start with doing some background on prosecutors, on how we came to work with Carol's office. Then we'll go into, I think, a good question for any consultant. What did we actually do? And then we'll go through the data and the recommendations, and we will do a break at the end of each section. And I'll speak up. I have a soft voice. So Mordecai was just on a slide that said, but first, we have a slide before this that is a video. Okay, we'll build in what was in the video throughout the presentation. So, but first we want to talk about how we started working with the Ingham County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. So VERA is a national nonprofit. We work with prosecutors' offices across the country who are committing themselves to creating changes within, their role as prosecutors within the system. So one of the things that's also important to say is we put out a call for applications. We are on a rhythm of putting it out about every 2 years. And the folks who we work with, we come visit, we talk through with both folks from the office and folks who are doing work within the community. And then when we do start an engagement, VERA is independently funded from foundations, philanthropies, individual donations. So there's no exchange of funds between the prosecutor's office and VERA. Keep going. So next we want to talk a little bit about our process. And so Jack talked a little bit about the data analysis that we did to give a little bit of context to it. So people do data analysis a lot of different ways. Some take the perspective of, okay, let's look at similarly situated situations, and they will define that as folks who have, say, the same type of charge and the same type of criminal history, and we're going to control for all of the other factors, and we're going to do an analysis of what does that show us about racial disparities. We do it very differently than that because we take as part of our premise that the whole piece of systemic racism in the US is that folks are not similarly situated to begin with. So it doesn't make sense to narrow it into that. Instead, we just take the data, we look at what is, and we do the analysis to try to capture what are some of the systemic disparities. So we've been doing presentations on data throughout the people assemblies. We did some follow-up analysis because people were interested in things like data for the impact on women, on youth, in domestic violence cases. In addition to the data, we meet with the office. We got to meet with One Love Global throughout the 2 years of the engagement. That's just some folks joining. But in addition to working with folks sort of at the leadership level, we also know within a prosecutor's office, there are many folks who work there who do the day-to-day decision-making. So we didn't just want to capture leadership, we also wanted to talk to other folks in the office. So we did focus groups with all the staff. We observed how folks were handling cases in court. We went to meetings where folks were talking about, okay, how are we going to make decisions on our cases? And then we also did work outside of the office to do things like get feedback from other system stakeholders. And then I want to hone in on the last one because we do this work with lots of places across the US. We've gotten a chance to hear from other communities who are organizing around prosecutor accountability and work with offices. So we try to bring that too. So that's like everything that went into the kitchen sink to make these recommendations. And I'll pass it off now to Jack.
So in the application, in the application from Carol's office to us, she had highlighted some of the reforms and changes that she had been engaging in leading up to why she wanted to work and why they wanted to work with VERA. So I just wanted to just put in a little bit of context that before we joined the office, there were some changes that were made inside the office. And after we've been here for about 2 years, there have also been some policy changes based on the results from our data analysis. So I just put up for this, I just put on the screen. Oh, okay. So part of the challenge is that I had updated this. So, yeah, so I'll just say it out loud. Some of the changes that were made before we came was a consideration for cases where immigrants were accused of crimes, and they have a right to be informed of the consequences if they were to plead guilty. So there were changes made for that. There were some changes about charging charging young people as adults. Also, some changes around no longer automatically charging enhancement statutes for every case. And then there was some culture change work that was happening within the office. So the reason why we came in was that it just appeared to be a commitment to trying to do something different and do something new. And on top of that, One Love Global had actually also written a letter in support of the application for us to come in and continue to work with Carol's office to address the racial disparities. So since we've joined or been here, there were two, okay, the other slide would have had it. There were two reforms that were adopted. One was to look at cases that arose from traffic stops with higher scrutiny, and another policy was around kind of a way that I would say like an enhancement statute, but for certain cases under what would normally qualify as a felony firearm charge. So some of y'all might have heard about this. So Carol had adopted a policy to no longer automatically be charging that on every case. And that kind of came out of us sharing our analysis, but also recommendations that have happened across the state, saying that folks no longer wanted that to be charged because it required at least a 2-year minimum and was coercive when folks were facing that sort of charge. They'd be more inclined to plead guilty. So those were just some of the reforms to give you the context of what sort of changes or what the context of what we were coming into when we came to work with Carol's office. So I'm going to pass it on. Yeah, so you can go to the next. There we go. Perfect. So our recommendations to Carol's office were based on two premises, not only to decrease racial disparities, but to do it within to decrease the impact of the criminal legal system on communities and individuals that are policed and arrested. So some people who talk about trying to decrease racial disparities really just means like how one group is doing in comparison to another. So a kind of sneaky way that some jurisdictions could address racial disparities is by increasing the policing of other communities who are not being as desperately impacted, right? So that would be, for example, targeting certain, zip codes in certain communities a little bit more than before so as to decrease that ratio. So understanding that that is something that some folks could do, at least approaching this work, came into this with, no, we're decreasing racial disparities within a decarcerative framework. So it's not about trying to just treat, different zip codes equally, with the understanding that like systemic racism, again, there will be no similarly situated. And so we have to just shrink. And how do we shrink in a way that is decreasing the actual disparities that we're seeing? So that's the theory kind of behind our recommendations. And if you go to the next slide, the recommendations fall into these different categories. So we gave recommendations about how to evaluate requests or arrests basically that the police kind of submit to the office. So the police make an arrest, they submit to the office a warrant saying, requesting that those charges on the warrant be the ones that the office approves of. So, we reviewed what that process looks like and have recommendations about cases that come from the police. We have recommendations about diversionary options. Diversion meaning, we'll define it more, but diversion just meaning like not going to incarcerative or, jail or probation, but it depends on how certain offices want to define diversion, whether or not probation would count. So we made recommendations about how to divert certain people out of the system, recommendations about survivors and how survivors, particularly of domestic violence, how to approach some of those cases. Another category is about how to review the sort of stuff that the police are submitting, so police accountability, and data and transparency. So, different jurisdictions, different DA's offices have different levels of sharing when it comes to how much data they're willing to share with communities. So here, Carol has been very transparent in sharing. All of our data analyses have all been public, and this information will continue to be public. So there's just some recommendations about how to sustain that, and then some possible areas for further exploration. However, the further exploration, I think, is something that should really be coming from you all, not necessarily from us. And so I think we're hoping to generate some conversation over what sort of changes folks would like to see, and less so much of hearing from us what we think. And that was a big hesitancy in even putting together these recommendations, to be honest with you, because we're not trying to come in and say, this is exactly how, we know better than others, which is why it was so important for us to be doing this in the context of the work that One Love Global is already doing and will continue to do. So we can go to the next slide. And so we want to point out, who are we talking about today? And I'm going to pass it over to Sheba to kind of talk about some of the results from our data analysis about who we're talking about.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jack. So yeah, to begin with, like Jack mentioned earlier, we began our work by doing data analysis and trying to break down the cases by the type of case, the race, gender, age. So this first graph you're seeing here is looking at a defendant's age at the instance of crime. And so this is just 2019 data, where you see that there's a high proportion of the overall caseload that is against young adults. And we're defining young adults as ages 17 to 25. So those are the cases, they're marked in red, whereas the rest are all other adults. So they do account for a lot of the cases in 2019 in particular. And then next slide, please. And then also, and I really want to emphasize that, I'm grounding this in young adults and the homeless population because of our conversations today. So this next graph kind of focuses on people experiencing homelessness in Ingham County. So this is a graph over time. So starting from 2015 to 2019, and the dashed line at the top there, that represents the how many cases were received by the office, and represents those people who are experiencing homelessness. Whereas the bottom lines there at the bottom represent all the other rates for different income levels from 0 to 100. So you can see that homeless individuals are experiencing arrest rates at a much higher rate. So that's the main thing to glean from this graph. And then another piece is that we're talking about rates and not raw amounts. So for example, if you look at 2015, the number is around 200 for the homeless population. So that means that if there were 100 individuals that were experiencing homelessness in Ingham County, 1,000, sorry, not 100, about 200 of them would be having their cases being sent to the prosecutor's office. So this graph is slowly increasing over time. We still need 2020 and 2021 data to kind of see where it's going, but it is on an upward trend.
So we're prosecuting these people? Is that what
So this one is, the cases are being received, and we'll dive into the prosecution rates eventually. Yes, thank you. All right, so next piece here. So the first bar you're going to be seeing is who comprises Ingham County. So Ingham County has individuals, like 11% of individuals in Ingham are Black, about 11% are Latinx, about 70 are white. And so we want to look at, out of the demographic, how many of them are constituting as defendants. And so, you mind going back? Thank you. So across really the top quartile, which means like the top 75% of, income, and the bottom quartile, so low income 25%, and the homeless defendants. Black individuals make up a disproportionately large share of those different demographics in Ingham. And so particularly like out of all of the homeless defendants, you have about 66% of those individuals are Black. And then I'll pass it off to Sarah to talk a little bit more about the recommendations.
We can skip the next slide. Okay, so the first section of the data and the recommendations that we're going to look into is about reviewing warrant requests from police. So police make an arrest, and then they send a warrant request to the prosecutor's office. The prosecutors then have discretion over the decision of, are they going to approve the warrant request and charge somebody? And if so, what are they going to charge them with? Are they going to deny the warrant request, which would end up the person's case? Or a third option, are they going to divert it, which we'll talk about more later? So here we wanted to look into some of the data about what's happening with the warrant requests. This chart that you're seeing here is kind of an overall, what are the rates at which cases are being denied by the office. So two things that we can hone in on here is if we look at 2019, you can see the gray line is for white folks is higher than the line for Black folks. So white folks are having 28% of their warrant requests denied, whereas Black folks are getting 23% denied. Another thing that we can look at this slide is that the rate at which warrant requests are being denied for white folks really jumped from 2016 to 2018, whereas the line for Black folks has stayed pretty steady from 2015 to 2019. So we're going to go through a couple more data slides and then take a pause. So what this table here shows, on one side we have what are the top charges that are being charged against Black young adults, and what are the top charges on the right that are being charged against white young adults. And so if you look at what's making up these two tables, you see that it's a lot of the similar top charges, but their order is different. So that could mean a lot of things. One of the things it could suggest is that kids are doing the same behavior, but the rate at which they're being arrested and charged for that behavior is different. So if we go to the next slide. Let's skip this slide just for the sake of time. It'll be for the report later. So in this presentation, when we're talking about young adults, that's folks who are 17 years old to 25 years old. Here, this table is looking at young people under the age of 17 who are being charged by the office. What are they being charged for? The number one charge is for armed robbery. And then we can go to the next slide. So this section, this is a really, really heavy section. We're going to stop at the end of this one. But this is about what are the rates at which kids are being charged as adults. That means rather than going through the juvenile process, they're being sent through the adult process that carries the possibility of adult penalties. In 2019, Black young adults were 100% of cases disposed as guilty for young people under 17 years old charged as adults. So these are kids who are arrested, are charged as adults, and then are found guilty. And then the last slide for this section. This is similar to the previous slide, but it's showing it across time from 2015 to 2019. So you can see the red section is Black young people under the age of 17, and the gray section is white young people under the age of 17. And overall, we see a trend that almost all young people under the age of 17 whose case was disposed as guilty are Black. So that's heavy for folks. This is their lived experience inside of this room, outside of this room, in the Zoom. So we're going to take a pause here.
So let's take a pause here, and we've presented on top of the other slide that Aislinn presented. Now we have the criminal legal system, right? Can we get some reactions? Like, I've got 1,000 different reactions, but I'm not talking. What are your thoughts? What's hitting you? We've got parents all across online and with us. What's hitting you? And for those that are here with us, I will translate what they're saying because they're not close to the mic. So we have one question. So the question in the room is around the data point, around 100% of the youth that are under the age of 17 were Black and were charged. And so the question was, what's the floor? Is it 9, 10, 11, 12? Like, what's the floor? So what's the answer?
I can comment if you want. So in Michigan, there is no legal minimum for what is called designation, which is one of the ways a juvenile can end up in the adult system. I don't favor using that. It used to be used quite a bit before I was elected. There are also 2 other categories where a juvenile must be at least 14 to be sent to the adult court. And then our definition of who is a juvenile changed last October 1st. So now up to the age of 18, one is considered a juvenile. So we now have joined the 47 other states, I believe it is, so that right, we're defining what a juvenile is differently than it was in 2019.
Thank you. Yep. And so the other question was, what were the charges? So we're gonna go back 2 slides. So what are some of the other reactions online?
One of the reactions online is there's a lot of hard work and important data that impacts real people. Judge Simmons is working to create a community court, a transformative justice-inspired court that can serve as an alternative to punitive measures. Carol likely knows more about this. Many counties are trying to revive pretrial services programs that screen folks early in the process, and is some of how y'all try to make Rex already a form of community care, transformative justice response to what you have learned that you see as a possibility for intervening early in the criminal justice process to find alternatives to punitive responses when possible. And does that mean carceral recs were made for some individuals?
So the question was, if kids are being charged as adults, does that mean that when their cases were resolved that they were receiving carceral sentences? So I'll let Carol or folks from the office weigh in if they want to, but our charge analysis is not connected to the outcomes analysis one-to-one, but it's our understanding that, yes, there are young people under the age of 17 who are sentenced to adult facilities.
That is correct. Typically, there wouldn't be a recommendation to send a juvenile to the adult court unless it was viewed as a very serious offense. And usually someone who's had significant impact services already in the juvenile system. So we're certainly looking at that much more closely now than when these charges may have been brought, which was before 2019. But yes, typically people who would be seen as serious enough to go to the adult court, there usually would be a recommendation for some level of incarceration or at least adult ramifications. That's one reason I'm so reluctant to do that.
Another comment. Thank you for sharing this data. I finally feel there may be hope for our Black youth. This is exactly what happened with my mentees, and it's no longer just anecdotal. Again,
We got a parent.
I don't think any child should be prosecuted and sent to any facility where there are adults.
That's right.
Period. That's what do we have for our children? This city, what are we offering them so that they don't do all this damage and find a little place to get into? There's nothing in Lansing for our children to do. We have to get some resources in this city to help our kids so they won't be doing all the crazy things and making wrong choices. Get somebody in here that will mentor them, offer them some support systems. We talk about incarcerating children. That's crazy. Give them some services so that they have something to do. Keep them busy in the community. Offer them some support. When I'm a native of Lansing, and there are 6 of us. I have 5 brothers and sisters. We all were born and raised. A couple of them were born in the South, but the majority of us were born and we were all raised here. That's crazy. I can't even imagine, because I have kids. I have 16, a 14, 11, an 8-year-old still at home. I can't imagine my kids to an adult prison. There's something to do to keep these kids busy so that their minds don't just wander and want to connect with the wrong people.
So we had a parent here. If you can't really hear just crazy of charging any child as an adult. And I think you echo the sentiments of many in the community, and we are sympathetic and we are compassionate to families that are, who are going through pain. But charging children as adults is not the answer. And there are means and there are resources that we can make available to families, but children as adults. And I had the opportunity to be with one of the young men who were falsely accused in New York for raping the lady in the New York park, who spent 7 years in prison. And his account of what happened at the police station and how they were prosecuted, it broke my heart. And so we have to find another way. Like, this data is, I just want a big why across every freaking slide. Why? Because the people that are represented in this data look just like me. And so it's me in that data. It's my boys, it's my girls, it's the folks at our church, it's the folks in our school that's riding these cattle buses. So what we like to do is take hands. So we have some hands up. We see Shalana Banks. If you'd like to come off mute, that would be great and speak.
Yep. So I am a long-term resident of Lansing. I was born and raised here, left to go to school and came back. And to me, there seems to be a lot of work being done in silos. So we have people who are saying that we're trying to stop this school to prison pipeline essentially in Lansing, because that's what it's really turning into. And Angela's group with One Love Global seems to be the only group that really is tackling that situation and being the only ones to take the lead on that. But our city is getting federal dollars to address low income areas in Lansing, address the school disparities, the lack of matriculation in the Lansing School District. The money that's going to these agencies or these bigger entities, they're not doing the work. And so who holds them accountable? How do we hold them accountable? Because that's where we're really getting the issue. They're getting the money, Angela's doing the work, or Angela's group is doing the work. The people with this group is doing the work. Why is the money being sent to the people who are just literally getting it? And then on the flip side of it, nothing's being done. Our children are now catching buses to get to school, which is absurd. Catching a city bus in a town size the size of Lansing. We don't have the supports and the resources, but the money is there. The money has been there. What do we do? How do we, as regular everyday citizens, try to hold them accountable other than just voting someone out of office, which obviously is not working, and that's a every 4-year fix. But how do we do that right now? Who do we contact to say, hey, so this money was given to this person or to this agency and we have nothing to show for it? What do we do about that?
So that's why we're here. We have to do it together, because what elected officials are saying, oh, we're talking to community. Community is, we're moving on the wishes and the voices of community, and it's not true. They're not talking to the community. What you just said is how we all feel across this community. We have ESSER funds. The school had received millions of dollars in ESSER funds. We have ARPA funds. There are grants. There's not a money issue. It's a mentality. It's systemic racism at its best. And what they're saying is that unless you all come together and stand up together, we're going to continue to do what we're doing. We're going to continue to police your communities, arrest your youth, and prosecute your youth. If you don't stand together and we don't organize ourselves, they're going to continue to make the decisions that they feel that are continuing to harm because we let them. So we have to organize ourselves, and we have to make our voices known, and we have to have a people's agenda. Voting is a part of that, and accountability. We have to show up and talk to Carol's office. We got to show up and talk to the city council. Make them do what they've been elected to do. And if they're not elected, like the people of Jackson, Mississippi, guess what they did? They got their own mayor elected. They selected a person from the assembly and elected their own mayor. And isn't it funny that now they have a water crisis and they have a mayor that's willing to stand up and say what's right? This is why we're here. This is why Vera has been doing this work. And we wanted to share this. We want to really look at this, because I want to ask this question. What narrative does this data say? What is the narrative that this data suggests? Because you have people who are not culturally responsive, who are not culturally intelligent, who are looking at these numbers, and there's a narrative. So what is the narrative that we need to absolutely destroy from this data? Because it seems like everybody's in power is okay with this. So what's the narrative?
It's a continual story of defunding communities, right? The people we're seeing is less than that don't have said value when it comes to city funding and state funding. And that's for us specifically to come together as a group and say that we are the community of Lansing, saying that these funds need to go directly into our communities in ways that are for us by us, right? So everybody from each ward can say what's happening in their community and how it's built up specifically. But the second part of the responsibility comes from us being at those city council meetings too, and understanding what's happening with these funds, and then going to places like committee of the whole, where they specifically make the decisions of what's going to happen, not the actual city council meetings.
So he was talking about the process. We have to get involved. We have to get involved in the process of decision making. We can't sit by. I want to go back to Norma's point. What does the future look like? We know that by 2030, there will be globally, we will need 69 million teachers. We know that globally. We know that. We know that we do not have a workforce that is trained to actually take America into its future. Why? Because we think punitive, we arrest, we incarcerate, and we see what's happening with our economy. We are at a very pivotal moment, and racism is driving the whole show. What we're gonna ask you to do, we've got a series of questions. Are there any comments in the chat that need to be lifted up before we send you into breakout sessions? And then after your brief moment of breakout, we're gonna come back, hear from you, and hit the recommendations before we leave. So, but we gotta hear your voice. We need to hear your voice. So we're gonna have some discussions here at your tables, but are there any comments in the chat before we send you into breakout sessions? Your facilitators will be Aislinn Lillian, and Angela Stepter. There will be 3 facilitators, and they will be in each group, and then we'll be here in person, but there'll be 3 facilitators. There'll be about 10 folks in every breakout group. So Lillian, Aislinn, and the third name, and Angela Stepter will be your facilitators. We've got someone that's in the waiting room trying to get in. We got a comment here in person. Yes.
Yes, racism is part of the engine that is moving the disparity and keeping it wide. And there are people who have a vested financial interest in keeping as many people desperately poor as they can because they benefit off of that. But don't forget, when you think of all of these different things and we say things that are very
She's saying follow the money. That racism, right? So I'm translating. She's like, follow the money trail. That's what she's like bringing out, is follow the money trail. We have to follow the money trail, but if community does not stand together, we have been to these meetings, and what they've said is, you all are a small group. We say we're representing hundreds. We got, it's like the networks, like the cell phone, like look behind us, there's all these people, and so, well, you only got 13 or 15 in the council meeting. You got to show up. They don't believe unless we show up in numbers. If we had not seen George Floyd situation on a cell phone, people would still not believe what we've been trying to say for a long time. We have to show up together. So what we're going to do is we're going to have these breakout sessions, and the questions, if someone could place the questions in the chat before we go into the breakout session. The questions. Okay, thank you. So we're going to go into breakout session.
So since we're all back here, would anybody like to share out? Would somebody like to be the spokesperson for their group? You can raise your hand. We can call on you just to share out the last couple minutes.
Let's see.
Jen, is that you volunteering? I see you up on mute.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. This is yours.
The first question, I kind of really felt that the kids were being abandoned because the issues were not being addressed or taken care of. And that others felt that there was some blaming of the children, that they have to bear the responsibility of this. Whereas the community is the part that has to be really changed. People have to get engaged and be involved and be heard.
So, Jen, thank you for that comment, because that was part of what came out in our group, is trying to encourage more young people to get involved and have a stake in what is happening with their peers in the community. And so, one of the things we talked about is making it easier for youth to get involved, and especially in groups such as One Love Global, where they may not know or really haven't figured out how, but that's okay. We have lots of opportunities, just as other groups in the community, where you can learn, you can feel your way into what is important to you and how you can make a contribution. But it's their peers, it's the youth in the community coming forward and just lending their time where they can to make their voices heard.
Thank you. I just got an inbox from someone, and it's a really good response to what we're talking about. It's a multi-pronged issue, and it needs many approaches, such as reparations, educational support, grants aimed at the homeless population, etc.
And there's a post in the chat. How do we turn the curve was one of the questions, and they say we have to politicize people so that they get out and vote and attend the city council meetings. We have to lean on our government powers that be to divert funding to support young people's development?
I came from Jean's group, group 4, and so one of the things that was also brought up with what stories does the data tell about Lansing's Black youth, one of our participants says that it's gone beyond abandonment. Yeah. She believes that Black youth are being seen as the enemy. And one of the members said, we're placing a lot of blame on Black youth for things that are going on in the community.
Talking financial disparities now. We're still in one of our breakout sessions.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so we're actually working on our breakout session as a group, sharing out from our breakout groups, Mordecai. So if you stay on mute for a couple more seconds, and then we can switch over to one bigger group. Sorry to cut you off, Jen.
Am I still talking?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. As far as who the voices are, prosecutors are listening to, it's kind of like where the money's at, you know. And also I think it's just the culture has got to change. People have got to see a difference and a need and a value of all of us, so that what they're listening to are the people who are part of it. We want to change. We want things. We don't want children going to prison for life, period. We don't want to see that. We want to see something that's different in the system to help turn some of this stuff around. Because even if parents suddenly take a wave of revival into being, you know, involved in their education, and we can pull the government down, we still have a lot of kids that are going to have a lot of problems, and they're still going to need all the support they can get.
Those of you that are online, I think you came back from your breakout. We are in an open breakout session here, and we've been just wrestling with who benefits from Black children being criminalized and not being diverted. Mm-hmm. And, you know, what policies are being put in place to change the trend of this data at the prosecutor's office. You know, we have policing, you got prosecution, and then you got prison. You know, I call it the 3 Ps, you know what I'm saying? And so we're talking about the middle P, which has a lot of power to say no. The problem is, am I willing to be in this position and actually do something different and reimagine a different future? I got power. And so that's what we heard today on our other call with leaders in education, and said, you know what, instead of suspending, what we're going to do is we're going to reimagine what love and care looks like. And this child was throwing chairs, throwing tables. And what we found was that the child was saying at 5 years old, I trust you. I trust you enough to show you the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if you can let me get it out, then I can empty out and you can pour back into me. And that's what happened. Put that child on a whole new trajectory. Why? Because they saw the child. A child. Yes, sir.
So I know when I worked, someone came to our agency and said, hey, like $5,000 to house that kid for a kid. Not only that, so now you got a doctor that comes in and you pay, you got a dentist that you pay. You know, there's a lot of people that eat off that one child. So you say a bunch of people benefit. Same with the court system, courts, lawyers, counselors, you know, goes down the line. A lot of people eat off one person getting in trouble.
So the answer here was who benefits from, you know, Black children being criminalized. We have a young man here said he worked in a juvenile delinquency center, and they would get sometimes $65,000 per child. And so you'd have a dentist, a doctor, right? You've got a lot of people eating off of that 65,000. So we have a lot of work to do. So we're going to ask them to bring all the rest of the folks back in those other breakout sessions. And we're going to have a share. We're super running out of time. We got about 15 minutes, and we have some follow-up action items. We've got links for you to join this movement. This is a movement. And I'm asking every parent to go grab 10 other parents. I'm asking every other community member, go grab 10 other community members. And so please come back if we can get them back in the breakout sessions. Hold on 1 second. I can do that.
Mordecai,
we've been back.
We're back. We shared our screen. So are we?
So let's get some brief share outs from those online. What were some of the takeaways from your group? And And so you can come off mute and just share. That's what the People's Assembly is. Huh?
Can you hear us, Mordecai?
Oh, y'all did this. Okay, excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm not on mute. Oh, okay. So y'all had to share out online. Can you share? Can we get, because we got folks in person. So can you all give us some highlights, just one or two from one group of what came out of your group?
Yeah, I can give you a full synopsis of what we talked about in our group. So our biggest, can you hear me?
Okay, now we can hear you. We're sorry.
All right, so we had a response from Sonia Anthony. We must allow our Black youth to learn about their true history and not the untruths that are being taught in the school system. From there, we have another response from another member is, it's a multi-pronged issue needing many approaches such as reparations, education support, grants amid the homeless population. We have one more response was to the answer to the questions of 1 and 2. How do we turn the curve? Oh, I'm sorry, that's not question 1 and 2, but there's responding to those questions. We have to prioritize people so that they get out and vote and attend city council meetings. 2, we have to lean on our government powers that be diverted to funding to support young people's development. We also have another response that to the question of who benefits from the criminalization of Black children, and they are being hunted by predators. Cops are predators specifically. And then from Carol Simon, the US is the only country in the world where children can be sentenced to life without parole.
I want to comment on the money. One of our individuals said that Dana Nessel is promoting herself on the backs of one kid's behavior, one Black kid. She believes that Dana believes it's okay to blame the Black child, and she's promoting her own self-interest. It's about a win, not about his family. They believe that Dana is definitely pro-police, that she doesn't care about making a name for herself off of this Black youth's back.
Yeah.
When we say his name, DeAnthony Van Aden, 21 years old. So here's what we're going to do. In our closing, we're going to put into the comment section how you can get involved. We're going to have another People's Assembly November 1st, Tuesday, November 1st. You don't want to miss it. We're doing it before the November 8th election, Tuesday night, 6 p.m. We need youth to be a part of this as well. We need to hear from our youth. And we want you to also email us. If you didn't get the opportunity, like you just saw the data and you're like in shock still, email us your thoughts. And we're also going to have during the month of October, we're going to actually reach out to you all. For those of you all said that you want to get involved, we're going to personally reach out to you all. And we are building the Lansing People's Assembly to move a people's agenda forward. I want to give Vera the last couple of minutes here to like capture maybe 1 or 2 slides of the recommendations. And then what I think we should do is put all of this together in a recorded form so that we can chop it back up and bring it back to the next assembly. But I want them to just kind of talk us through some of the recommendations. And I want you all to like take some notes because you're going to have questions. And then we'll end here at 8 as promised. We only have about 10 minutes. If you could take 5 minutes and go through maybe 2 slides of recommendations, that would be great. And can you share screen? Okay, that's great. Jack. Thank you for being with us, everyone. Just give us another, 10 minutes and we're out.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, we're about to share screen. We have different categories, as we mentioned. We have different categories of recommendations. As we mentioned, we don't have the opportunity to go through all the categories today, but all that information will be shared with you all, made public. What we are going to do is I'm going to walk you through a set of recommendations that we have around police accountability, because I heard that coming up in our conversation about youth. So just take 1 minute to share that. So. Oh yeah, you can share up my screen. Yes, okay, keep going. So these are the three main recommendations around police accountability. And something that we kind of stressed when meeting with Carol's office is that these are also a starting point of a conversation, right? So as I've mentioned, we're not the ones being policed, so it's not our experiences that need to inform and build out these recommendations. And I'm going to explain what this means. One of them, the first one is, as we know, the police are the ones that send in the charges to the prosecutor's office, and the prosecutor decides what they approve, what they don't approve, which charges they're going forward on, and if they want to do different charges. Okay, so our first recommendation was to deny those requests. It's called a warrant request. Is to deny those requests for cases where folks are being charged with assaulting an officer, and people who are charged with resisting arrest or obstructing, especially if there's no significant injury to the police officer. I think it is important to note that the statute doesn't require injury to the police officer to be charged with assaulting a police officer. Our second, and the reason why we have data points in these slides that kind of show, but this one of the top charges charged against homeless folks is assault on an officer. It's also some of the charges that were charged against the 17 and unders. Yeah, I see you shaking your head. You saw that. It's actually pretty commonly charged against most demographics, but the especially concerned about particularly like the disproportionality for children and homeless folks. Secondly, evaluating cases for police credibility, including reviewing corroborating evidence for police testimony, and also looking at any history of dishonesty. So, the police officer's credibility can sink a whole case, especially if that case is a pure like drug possession case, or if it's a case that came from some sort of police encounter. So we really stress reevaluating the credibility of police officers and trying to get, dash cam or body camera footage to corroborate whatever it is that the officers are saying happened. And I think that to the extent to which, and again, I think that's a starting point of a conversation. And lastly, there are certain exceptions where officers, as you may know, like the way that the law is written, it gives officers the power to search and seize certain things without a warrant, for example. So there are certain exceptions that let them do that without a warrant, and that's if they were to see something in what's called plain view, or if somebody were to consent to that search. Because of the power dynamics and because of issues of police credibility, our recommendation is to always treat anything that's received or found or connected to something that is found through plain view, or retrieved through the consent of somebody, that be treated as inadmissible, which means that it's not considered evidence in the case. Those are three of our recommendations. If you want, we could go to another set, or we can just go into our next steps. Because as I mentioned, this these slides and everything will be also provided. We've provided them to One Love Global, and we are going to be putting together a more robust report that kind of gives some of this data analysis in there as to why we made these recommendations. So if we want to go, or if there's any questions, yeah, okay, let's take questions. If there's any questions or points of clarification, or if folks are curious to see some of the data that supports why we gave these recommendations, happy to answer that or provide any clarification. Is there anything in the chat?
There's nothing in the chat at this point.
Okay, thanks, Angela.
Mm-hmm.
So do we want to go to, let's move on to the next slides, and I'll tell you when to stop. One more? Okay. So actually, I think this might be a good time to switch and just let Sheba explain really quickly the data dashboards, because one of the things that came out of this work is that Carol did commit to and has been incredibly transparent about the data from the case management system that we've analyzed. So our data analysis is not only going to be available to you all, but there's also commitments around how the data is going to continue to be shared. And I think that that's really helpful to continue so that you all can continue to have these conversations. So Sheba, being our data researcher, is just going to quickly describe what the what the like two different ways in which offices that are prosecutors' offices and other government agencies tend to share data and how that can be really useful.
All right, so I wanted to, so on the slide here is an example of a data dashboard, which really just helps the community know what's happening to their community when, cases are entering. So they can show, like this one is from Minneapolis, from the Minneapolis District Attorney's Office. And so it's showing you, how many adult cases are there? How many juvenile cases are there? What is the racial demographic, the breakdown? What's happening to these cases? Are they, thank you. Are they being dismissed? Are they being prosecuted? Are they being diverted? Are they being charged, declined? And then what is the offense level? Are most cases felonies? Are most cases misdemeanors, et cetera? So it lets the community know, what's happening in their community, and they can kind of see that. The data dashboard, the other piece about them is that the government agency, the organization, they're the ones that are creating, they're deciding what data to share and what data to not share. So there is that piece. There's also, that organization is also the one that's doing the racial disparity analysis. So how they choose to do that math is dependent on that organization, that they can share that. So that is one thing with the dashboards. Next slide. Another thing is that this is from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. So they also do the same thing, show what's happening, what are the racial disparities over time. But the one thing I wanted to share here is that in the corner that's circled there, you can download the data. You can see what's happening in your community. I mean, all the personal information has been, wiped out. So it's just, just the case information, but community members can see what's happening. They can do analysis on their own, or if they're part of an organization, they can do it together. And then present that back and, bring that accountability layer is there as well. Oh, evidence publicly. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'll pass that to Jim.
So prosecutor's office. So something that I didn't share in my introduction is that I was also a prosecutor in the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office. I was a prosecutor for 4 years. And so I'm a little familiar about how like the inner workings go. Plea deals and information on plea deals are very difficult to actually collect any data on. What we try to do is try to approximate what that means. So the issue with a plea is that you can be charged with something, and then what you plead to is something different, right? And with an exchange of an understanding that, what you're pleading to isn't as bad as what you might get at trial if you were to lose at trial, right? That's what the concept of the plea is. Plea negotiations are moving and different. And what pleas are offered and when is not necessarily standardized or recorded in a very specific place. So we try to approximate that by looking at what are people getting charged with cumulatively from the beginning, what are folks getting arrested with, right? Then what are people getting charged with by the prosecutor? And then what are they pleading to? What's the conviction rates? What's the sentencing rates? So our analysis looks at each one of those decision points separately. It's very difficult to do that across the same person, right? So we have to look at each decision point separately. And then measure the disparities along each of those things. So different offices have that information available in different ways. I would say that for the Ingham County Prosecutor's Office, what we were able to do is we're able to see what cases come in from the cops. We're not able to see what gets dismissed. We're able to see then what gets charged. And we're able to see for some what gets convicted, and we can see some sort of picture, not the best picture, but some sort of picture around sentencing. So we've made recommendations to the office about how to better use their case management system to try to start tracking that. But part of the sustainability of this work is not only providing the dashboards that would help give you a picture of the racial disparity analysis, but sharing the actual data so that community members can look at it themselves. And you can do your own analysis and see how that matches with your experience. So the plea deals are a tough thing to really quantify.
So we have a lot of work.
Yeah.
There's a question in the chat.
Yes, Emily.
Yep. So that's what that's what Jack was just referring to. Can you all hear us? Can you all hear us? Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that is the question that Jack was giving a detailed answer around plea deals. So we have one more question. Yep.
What about race?
So the question was, with all the data that was collected, what kind of data was collected around racial profiling? So that's a question we have from someone that's in person.
Yeah. So we were able to find some data that showed that Black folks are 1.7 times more likely to be stopped by the police, 3 times more likely to be searched, and not any more likely to have contraband. So we were able to pull that based on the prosecutor's office's data. But I think what we were also able to show that one of our researchers was able to show is overlay maps that show the county, Ingham County, and where folks are living that experience the most cases, which is an environment, that is a pulling out from that analysis of individual bias. And we were able to show the overlays with that and historically redlined communities. And it showed that direct relationship.
So here's our commitment, is that I'm asking all of us to commit to at least 6 months of growing together. We're going to reach out to you in October. We're going to build. We have a ward strategy where we're going to reach out to you and ask, like, what ward are you living in? Let's identify the issues in your ward, right? And we want to identify leaders in the community that will help us with this work, and hold this space, this sacred space called the People's Assembly. Our next official gathering, which will be a follow-up to this discussion, especially specifically around the recommendations. And we will also have a discussion around electoral justice and voter suppression and all the things, and how can we overcome, and what do we need to do to turn the vote out, but also just overcome all the things that are happening around disenfranchisement of Black folks at the polls. And so we've got a lot of major discussions. This is about getting educated and organizing ourselves. We own the space. So I want to thank everyone for being with us on tonight. I want to thank Vera, and thank you all for being here and adding so much value. And I want to thank the parents and the community members. We always show you love by waving at the screen, and that's how we show you love, right? I don't know if that is translating, if you can feel that, but it's definitely coming your way. And And I want to thank those that are here with us in person and our One Love Global family, and even those that are joining with us in person and online from the Ingham County Prosecutor's Office. We thank you for being here tonight, and we are looking forward to building one of the most, impactful movements that will establish a people's agenda, and we will elect our own officials and keep our children safe. Thank you for joining us.
Mordecai, can I just I just want to make one comment from Carol that I think is important before we leave. She says that it's also dependent on how many charges are authorized, whether someone gets a diversion of some sort, specialty court, youthful trainee probation, pre-charge diversion, etc. There are a lot of places that impact Emily's question, but tough to measure, but we're trying to find proxies to measure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful night, everyone. Those of y'all that are here with us,